Hello and welcome back to the Last Place Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your co-host Ethan, joined with my fellow co-host Ryan, and we're here to talk about QBs, QB stats going into next year. Ryan, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
All right. So we are going to be going over stats. This is the first episode of our Statathon series this year for this off season. We're going to be going over stats from last year, so the 2023 season. We're just going to be going over surprising stats that we've seen. We have the whole sh stat sheet for all of the QBs. We're going to be going over QBs today, but we have the whole full stat sheet, just going down from top to bottom. We're not going to be reviewing every single player, but we're just going to be looking over things that either surprise us or some things that are interesting, pointing out some outliers, and just looking at the overall stats and seeing um, the big improvements that quarterbacks have made, some drop down, see just just interesting stuff that we see on the stat sheets. So, I guess we can just go over from the top. Um, our number one player this year, number one QB, Josh Allen.
Uh,
That boy,
sorry.
that boy came to play. Like
A little
just
bit.
in fantasy points alone, he outscored the other quarterbacks by 40 points.
Yeah.
And you have it every year. There's always that one player that's like way up here, and then everybody else is like down here. So I think for us this year, Josh Allen is that guy. Like he just across the board, stat lines were great. I mean, with the exception of interceptions.
Right.
He had 18 interceptions this year, but I think his overall play was fantastic when it comes to fantasy football. Like he outscored on a per game basis, outscored everyone else by 4 fantasy points every game. 24 fantasy points is what he averaged, which is nuts for a quarterback.
Yeah. I mean,
I
that's
mean,
pretty
because
cool.
you have those up and down games where, you get 40, 45 points, but then you have games where it's like, oh, well, he got
Here's
completely
the
shut
thing.
down and got like 10 points. So like to average 24 points is
It's
crazy
insane.
awesome.
It
So
led me to a fantasy football championship this last season.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Love that guy.
it's really interesting like looking at these stat sheets um between number one and number 10. Just the fantasy spread.
Well,
So
don't
like
even
the
worry
number
about
one
numbers.
player,
No, 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 really quickly, don't even worry about numbers. The difference between number one is Josh Allen, number 10 is Baker Mayfield. Just think
yeah,
about that.
no, but we're
In
going over
last year.
stats here. It's all
I
about the
know,
numbers.
I know. So
So
now include
so
those numbers.
between
But
number one,
I
yeah,
think
but
name comparison is crazy.
yeah, but between number one and number 10, it's 130 fantasy points. And that really gives weight to like how you draft.
Hmm.
Like I'm really starting to come around to Josh's mentality of, you know,
Get that
or
KB.
is that QB worth a first round pick or a second round pick, depending on who the QB
I
is.
I would not ever say first, but definitely second. So, for example, in my league where I have him, I'm pretty sure I took Josh Allen as my second round pick in the middle of the second round, and then I went from there.
Yeah. And it's I'm really starting to come around to like our QB's not like fourth, fifth, sixth round picks or seventh round picks.
Oh yeah,
They're your
QBs,
safe players that
Russell
are
Wilson
consistent.
QBs
Like,
are insane. So like let's
yeah,
look at the numbers, right? So Josh Allen throws for 4,306 yards and 29 touchdowns. He
not the
rushed,
most.
yeah, not the most. I mean, he's 300 yards passing off of the most that we had last season.
Yeah.
and not the most touchdowns, but within a plus or minus 3 margin. So, that's not crazy. Rushes for 524 yards and 15 touchdowns. Like
That's what puts him above everybody else. Is
that is
those 15 rushing touchdowns is crazy. Like that needs to be pointed out because that's that's 60. No, no, no. So the difference between like Josh Allen going down to 1 down to 10 is 84 points. 60, what? 60, I can't do the math in my head, but it's 60 something points um
15 touchdowns,
going down.
what they're worth.
Well, it's more than 60 points for
No,
15
no, what are you
touchdowns,
talking
but
about?
um okay, well how much does 15 touchdowns?
Oh, that's
So
90,
15 times 6,
90 points.
90 points.
Yeah.
So that drops him, even if it went down to like 5, that's still that drops him down,
Drops them to
way down,
320 points total. So that
which
would
would put him at number 6.
good. Yeah, good for QB6.
So his rushing ability, especially in the red zone,
Put him over
is
5
huge.
quarterbacks.
Yeah, and there's only two quarterbacks this year that rushed for over 5. Yeah, over 5 rushing touchdowns. And surprisingly, neither of them are Lamar Jackson. And it was Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. So, you know, you I'm surprised like Lamar wasn't up there at least. Like he was
Sam Howell had
average for
5 of them
rushing
playing,
touchdowns.
bro.
Yeah.
Sam Howell
Yeah,
had.
even Sam Howell.
If you would have told me at the beginning of the season Sam Howell and Lamar Jackson would rush for the same amount of touchdowns, I would have spit on you.
How about Desmond Ritter and Lamar Jackson?
I would have spit on you. I'd have been like, so Atlanta's going to the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah, for real. So, like this, just the stat line at the top of this list is it's cool. It's cool seeing like how much a running quarterback can really affect your fantasy team. Because
Yeah.
if if you have one of these, top 2 or 3,
Josh Allen,
um,
Jalen Hurts,
yeah,
Lamar Jackson.
exactly. If you have one of these like top 3 or 4 quarterbacks, it all automatically vaults you. I mean, if you have a decent team around
Yeah.
you,
I mean, Dak
you're
Prescott's
vaulted
faster.
in into at least a playoff team.
Yeah.
So it's
I mean,
it's really cool seeing that.
other
So
receivers that are worth it, like Dak Prescott, 240 yards, you'll take that. J Love's 240 yards, you'll take that. Mahomes is
yeah,
380, you'll take that. Same with T Law, and at times Russell Wilson's rushing ability really saved me
yeah.
in some matchups. Not every matchup, because we all know how that Let's Ride season went. But yeah,
So
so I want you to go in depth because I know you prepared some kind of like a specialty look at Josh Allen too.
well, it wasn't necessarily a specialty look at Josh Allen, and we'll go into, some of the other stats that we have for him near the end of the episode. Um,
Okay,
because we're going over like, big play rate, we're going over a bunch of different stuff.
supporting cast
So
and stuff.
we're not gonna go from like player to player. We're just gonna go from like category to category and talk about the players. So we've got QB injuries this year.
We're huge.
Which QBs in your mind should have been near the top, but because of injuries were limited?
Kirko Chains, A-Rod, Joe Shiesty. You could argue Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, there's quite a few. Like you said, Kirk Cousins, Joe Burrow, um, Justin Fields,
Justin Fields, yeah, really good.
CJ Stroud,
Yeah,
Justin Herbert. They didn't play full seasons, and they're, like CJ Stroud is right on the edge of a top 10 quarterback. Um, but because he missed what, 3 games, he was out. He missed 2 games. You know, that put him just below top 10. If
Yeah,
he was what? Let me look at his stat line. He's 3 points below Baker Mayfield for a top 10 spot.
yeah,
I'd say if he had 2 more games, he probably would have been a top
easily,
six, top seven.
easily,
I'd,
easily.
I'd say top six because he's
Same thing with
only
Justin Fields, like
between
Justin
him,
Fields was starting to catch fire.
yeah, yeah, between him and Brock Purdy, it was what, 20, al almost 25 points. So like he could have easily made that in 2 games.
Dude,
So
CJ
just
next
just the
year is
fact
going to be
that
a monster,
yeah,
an
CJ
absolute
next year,
monster next year.
and that was without his top wide receiving option out for a good chunk of the season.
Well, and that would
So to
have
have him
been
and
throughout the
Nico,
entire year, like not having Nico
yeah,
for stretches, not having Tank
yeah,
for stretches, like that that's brutal for him. So if they can keep everybody healthy next year,
yeah.
that team is going to be wild.
And like Kirk Cousins was on a tear at the beginning of the season. He
Yeah,
would have been near the top of this list, like up there with
he
Lamar
was
and
the top
Dak.
five QB
Yeah,
and before his Achilles.
yeah. And he would have been up there with Lamar, Dak,
I think
Jordan
he would have been
Love.
at five. He probably wouldn't have
Yeah,
been over
I
Jordan.
think he would have been up there. But I I mean, if he wouldn't have had that injury to his Achilles, he would have been up there.
Yeah,
No doubt. Like there was 100%. Um, Justin Herbert is also another one. He only played 13 games.
Yep.
Now, obviously, like it's not his stats aren't great, but they're not terrible either. Like
Yeah. He was
it's
averaging what, 18
20,
points a game?
yeah, he was averaging 18 points a game, which is up there. I mean,
That's
it's
the same as
up there
Patrick
with
Mahomes.
what yeah, with Pat Mahomes, he would have probably been above Jared Goff on the 18 points a game.
That's about what
But
Stroud was averaging.
yeah,
A little bit below Brock Purdy.
so the fact that, Justin Herbert was that low, obviously they struggled on offense a lot this year, and they just had a not a great team, like just in general. So I could see like the draft and free agency, they could improve their team and get back to fully functioning, especially with what they got they got the new coach. They got Harbaugh, right?
Yeah,
So
Jim Harbaugh.
yeah, so Harbaugh coming in, they might, I don't know, his game plan is a little more conservative and a little more run based. So
Oh yeah, he's going to build a good team and
yeah, I
got a.
see the run game building up more and maybe Justin Herbert's production goes down. But I think his efficiency, he's a good thrower. Like he's a good passing option.
Oh yeah,
So
he's a
like
gun.
I think his efficiency will go up. Um, Especially, I mean, you look how JJ McCarthy this last year in college football with Michigan, look at how he did
Yeah,
in that system. I don't know how that will translate back to the NFL, but who
we'll
knows?
see. He'll either be
We'll
Joe
see.
Burrow or Joe out of football.
Yeah, really. Okay, so QB injuries, uh, that was pretty much it for that. Let's go over turnover rate.
Yeah, this
Turnover
is a
rate
team member.
has some surprising numbers in it. Um, for one,
Well, first of all, we're
I
not surprised
think,
that D Rid was 4.31%.
yeah, yeah, that, yeah, not
Wasn't as
surprising,
bad as Nick Mullins though.
but definitely not as good as our number one on here for this stat line. Dak Prescott, for having such a terrible like turnover rate, what, 2 years ago or last year?
It was
I
last
think
year.
he really struggled with turnovers last year.
Yeah.
And I
Lamar
think,
with the least
you know,
amount of
we kept hearing over the offseason that he improved, that he is focusing on
no,
not
and it
committing
looked
so
like
many turnovers.
it
And you
really
could
looked
see
like
it.
yeah.
You really could see it this year. He was slicing and dicing. And to see
But it's
him
not
go
that
from
so it's not that he was just conservative. It's that he was like almost surgical with what he was doing. Like
but
he
he
really
wasn't
knew what he
conservative.
wanted to do with the football.
He wasn't
That
conservative.
no,
I
that's what
mean,
I'm
look at it.
saying. It's not that he
45.
was conservative.
Yeah.
I'm saying
I
that
mean,
it's not that at all.
yeah.
But people will go after him and say, "Oh, well, like he was just trying to be careful, and so that's why the offense was struggling. This, that, and the other." And it's like, no, he was just doing his thing. He was doing what he was supposed
Yeah.
to do. And from last year to this year, like that's all you could ask for him. And
Yeah, and
obviously it turned out for the Cowboys.
I don't think it was physical mistakes that made last year so bad for him. I think it got in his head and he was making those mental
Could have
mistakes
been.
and those bad reads and whatnot. And I think he fixed that last off season and was able to get back on track.
Yeah.
So, to see him come back this strong, like he's almost a full point under some of these guys, a full percentage point under on the rating. He got a 1.71
Which is
on
insane.
his turnover percentage. I mean, considering that Josh Allen is a
Just what 3.5?
3.19,
Yeah.
yeah, 3.19. I mean, that's of course Josh Allen is he's he's a maverick. He just throws the ball downfield, you know. So to see Dak Prescott do that well this year, I
Yeah.
was really surprised. I mean,
It's eye-opening
I
of
think he
what
only
they can do
played
next year.
last year, he only played like 13 or 14 games or something along those lines. And he had 15 interceptions last year.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this year, he only had nine
here's
in
here's what I
what,
see with
17
Dallas,
games?
right? Here's
Yeah.
what I see with Dallas, Ryan. They can only figure out one part of their offense. So last year it was Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard in their run game was insane, but Dak Prescott was turning over the football. This year, Dak Prescott's not turning over the football, but they can't run that thing to save their life against a good defense.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Dallas needs to do. Like I want to see him go a little bit further. I mean, it's kind of sad at this point. Like every year, right before the season starts, you get your alert that the Dallas Cowboys have been eliminated from the playoffs, and like that's tough. I can't imagine being that franchise. But
It's got to be frustrating.
yeah,
And living here in Dallas, you hear a lot of
yeah.
this
Oh, you
is
you
this
know
is
it.
our year. This is our year. This is
It's
our
been there a
year.
year
And
since 1995.
I know. And it's just funny listening to them all, but it's kind of sad.
Yeah, I just point and laugh. But I know the Falcons
so
are going to a Super Bowl anytime soon, so I can do.
so okay, moving on from turnover rate. That was kind of our only real outlier there that I wanted to point out.
Yeah, everyone else was kind of in
Because
that like.
everything else is really really the same. I mean, Justin Herbert's was even lower. Surprisingly, Justin Herbert's was a
Yeah, but he played less.
1.57,
Yeah.
but he played less games. Yeah, he did. He played four less
I mean,
games than
well, CJ's 1.67 is kind of crazy too.
yeah.
Also played
Yeah,
less
that's
than
actually true.
Scott, but
Yeah. But let let's move on from turnover rate. I think that stat's interesting, but it's not like I don't know, it's not flashy. So let's go on to surprising performances from QBs. Stat wise, who did you not expect to be in the top 10? That is in the top 10.
I think the biggest one is Jordan Love.
Really? The
Jordan,
biggest one for me
I
is
mean,
Baker
Jordan Love.
Mayfield.
Well, Baker Mayfield at 10. You could have told me that before the season. I could have been like, you know what? Yeah, I could see that happening. Like if there are some injuries or whatever, like
Yeah.
that's something I wouldn't be shocked of. But if you said Jordan Love QB5, I'd have been like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's true. I'd say QB5, I wouldn't be, or I would be surprised.
So I guess you have to
Um,
put it in terms like that. Because, like, if you're like top 10, like, oh, Jordan Love's going to be in the top 10. Okay, yeah, I could see that. Baker Mayfield. Okay,
yeah,
I could see that. Jordan
squeaking
Love
in
at
at 10 or
5.
9.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Jordan Love at 5, I think, is the most shocking.
yeah. That is pretty shocking to me. And I mean, looking at his stats, it's not fantastic. Like when I say like fantastic, like Josh Allen, 15 touchdowns, 500 yards on the ground. He had 4 rushing touchdowns, 200 yards rushing. He had 4,000 yard season, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. That's all good. It is. I it's what I want to call average for that top 10 position,
Yeah.
because we've seen huge numbers from top 10 positions or even top 5 positions. I'd say like it overall it's above average, but Jordan Love may be the guy in Green Bay. Like I think this season was really great for him. And
Yeah.
I think it can only go up because they're going to keep building. They have such a young offense, like especially the offensive weapons that they have around him. I think his stats can only go up at this point unless there's injury. So, they're just going to keep adding pieces to that offense. I see green pastures for Jordan Love in the future. Like this last season was good for him. So,
For sure.
but for me, it was Baker Mayfield was a huge surprise for me, just because I didn't anticipate Baker Mayfield being a top 10
But,
quarterback in this league.
so
Maybe top 15, but
disclaimer,
that's it.
so Statathon stats were really great. Baker
Yeah.
Mayfield's stats look good. We can agree on this?
Yes.
Okay, here's the
Yes.
caveat. Mike Evans.
Is
Where
back.
Mike Evans going?
Oh, I thought he got re-signed.
Has he at this time?
I thought I saw a
Let's see.
I thought I saw a notification that they were re-signing him like yesterday, the day before. So
Let's see here.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that they signed him.
Mike Evans. Okay, yeah, this is recent.
Yeah, they signed
Uh,
him to like a 2 year.
oh, with a void year at the end.
Yeah,
Josh,
to a 2 year deal. Yeah. So,
that's a good.
with Mike
That's
Evans
a
coming
good
back, that's a
team deal.
yeah. I wish Kirk Cousins would make that for the Vikings. So, yeah,
Oh,
but he
two
won't.
years and 21 million. That's
Yeah.
impressive. 10 mil a season for Mike Evans, who was
Yeah.
a top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah. So,
Good for him.
moving on.
But
Yeah. So Brock Purdy was also my surprise entry into the top 10, let alone top 6. I knew he was going to be good. I didn't think he was going to be top 6 good.
yeah,
And a lot of his stats surprise me. And we'll get into some of it here in a little while, but a lot of his stats surprise me. And I know it may be just the Shanahan system that he's in, but I also think it is, he has the head for football,
yeah.
for being a QB. I think he's got the smarts for it. And he's got the X factor.
He just needs to get the
So
killer instinct.
yeah, yep. And we'll talk about it a little bit when we get near the end of the episode. Um, so which quarterbacks for you underwhelmed this year in within the top 10 to 15, I'd say. Which quarterbacks underwhelmed?
I mean, there's a lot that you could say, like, T Law. Elon's a big underwhelmer. Russell, I think, underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean Stafford even underwhelmed. How many
Yeah.
games?
See, for me,
They only played,
my top
and
my
then
top
obviously Herbert.
underwhelming. Yeah. The top guy that I have for being like the underwhelming one, Pat Mahomes.
Yeah,
I
that's.
was expecting a little more. I was expecting more than what he gave.
But wait
I
until we talk
mean,
about his
less than,
supporting cast. Hang on,
yeah.
we're going to talk about his supporting cast later, and we're going to dig into that.
That's
But I
no, we can
understand.
go over that now. Like it's
Okay,
this is something that the
but now,
NFL,
so here you go. Here's his
the Chiefs
supporting cast,
need a supporting cast.
right? So his supporting cast big play rate, I think it might actually be the highest, but it was 31%. So it's like they made big plays or did nothing on that offense. But he had tight end three in Travis Kelce. But again, tight ends aren't super impactful in fantasy or in the NFL. So I mean, you could argue that there's an area right there that when your best player is your tight end, your team has a little bit of a problem. Other than
Yeah.
Mahomes making big plays and winning you football games. But anyways, so then you have Pacheco at running back 15. Would have been higher without the injuries, but so you have that little bright spot. Rashi Rice, wide receiver 27. He looks like a stud, but he wasn't
He didn't come in till late
coming
in the
until the
season.
end, and I mean end of the
Yeah.
season. But then you have MVS, wide receiver 106,
Which
Sky
is no
Moore,
longer on the team.
wide receiver 107, and KT, wide receiver 108. That man needs
Yeah.
a supporting cast. So you talk about, honestly, I'm more impressed that he finished at QB8 with how bad of a supporting cast he did than saying he should have done better. That man has no
Yeah.
team. He's the entire football team. And I think where he lacks in that like fantasy ending point is
Yeah.
because he's literally playing football by himself and he's just
Yeah,
that.
he is. He is. It's For me, I expected a little more stat wise out of him. I understand his situation. I just expected a little more, and I hope that he gets more help this year.
Wide receiver 100s and you want more than QB8? I'd be begging for QB8 if I had three wide receiver in the 100s.
That's true. That's true. I get that. I
You're
get
telling
that.
me I could have eight
Because he
when these
spreads
guys
no,
stuff?
but see, the thing is he spreads the ball around so much that his wide
But
receivers
it,
can't
but it
eat.
wasn't a
But he
problem when
has
Tyreek
to.
Hill was
He
there.
has to. I
But it wasn't
understand.
a
He
problem when
has
Tyreek
to.
Hill was there.
It wasn't a yeah, it wasn't a problem because Tyreek was like a beast and he was getting all the receptions. Him and Travis Kelce were eating. Now everybody gets just a small meal. That's it. So like
Including
there's no fantasy benefits.
including fantasy owners. So enjoy your small meal.
Uh,
Patrick Mahomes is going
okay.
to be
So so let's go on. For me, I think uh I think Tua had the yards this year. He was the fantasy
passing leader.
like, huh?
He was the passing leader too, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Or
he was the passing leader this year. And I expected a little more from him. Uh, I don't really know how to say this. I was expecting like a top five performance from him
I was
because they
too.
have such an explosive offense and have such talented players. Like I was expecting more than this,
Well,
and
I
which
think
is, I mean,
here's what I think happened with Tua. I think the problem with that lightning in a bottle offense is that when you're just putting it on somebody, eventually you're going to go ahead and pull them. Because there was
yeah,
multiple games where Tua was sitting out because the Dolphins were beating dudes so bad that he
yeah,
just didn't even need to play anymore.
yeah,
So I think that's part of it. That's not everything. I think turnovers hurt him a little bit, like 14 interceptions and 5 fumbles lost.
yeah, it definitely
That
did.
hurts you a little bit because that's what. So that's 14 points taken off for interceptions. Add 14 points to him, and he is
Wow, that's not just 14, it's
goes up one
-2
spot.
for interceptions.
Okay, so that's
So it's
28.
28
So I mean, and 28 points puts him, up there with
in
QB.
top five. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, on top of that, you have the 5 fumbles lost. That's a little high in comparison with the people in between him and QB5. That's two more than the next most after him. And then you don't have any rushing yards coming from him.
Yeah.
And you do from Mahomes, you do from Purdy, and you do from Jordan Love. So that's another
Yeah.
thing. Also, no rushing touchdowns. And again, you do have that from Jordan Love. You do have that from Purdy. And you do have that from Jared Goff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, him missing out and getting pulled from games and turnovers is what ultimately dropped him those couple spots.
Yeah. And that was kind of a bummer for me. He was on my fantasy team for my work league. He got me to the playoffs. I I love it. He was fantastic. I just expected a little more out of this
Yeah.
year.
I think
And
everyone,
it was a little underwhelming,
no,
even though it was a
that's
top
fair to
10
say.
performance. So,
Then you're the guy
um,
who has Baker, and you're like, life is literally the greatest it's ever been. And he's
yeah,
QB10. It's like, dude, it's not that serious, but to them it was. It's that Baker magic.
yeah, that Baker magic. All right, now let's go on to something that I'm interested in seeing and getting your perspective of.
Mhm.
Um, the top five sacked quarterbacks this year.
All right, hit me with it.
All right, number one, Sam Howell at 65.
Yes.
65. That dude was getting hammered in the backfield.
They're about to draft a quarterback and not an offensive lineman. Go ahead,
Yep.
keep.
Bryce Young, 62.
Yeah, that's
Zach Wilson. It was quite a drop from number two to number three, but number three is Zach Wilson at 46.
okay.
Then Russell Wilson at 45
That also tracks.
and Justin Fields at 44.
That also tracks.
Yeah. So I don't know. I, like you said, I think they should be getting O line. I think the Commanders should be getting an O line before they start
It's just so
trying to
comical.
get a quarterback.
It's just comical to me that these lot lizards of a franchise are sitting back saying, "Oh my God, our quarterbacks suck," and it's like, you know, you killed your quarterback, right? Like, you got him sacked like a bajillion times. Oh,
Yeah.
nah, he's just gotta play better and make better reads and yeah, this, that, and the other. And it's like, bro, no, like
I
he's
mean,
trying to do his job and you can't protect.
yeah. I mean, look at Sam Howell. Just take a beat and look at Sam Howell. He was almost a 4,000 yard passer. Now, of course, he had the same interceptions as he did touchdowns,
Oh yeah, he's the new James
but
Winston.
he was also running for his freaking life
Yeah,
every play.
yeah.
I You get him a
What
little
him to
help
do?
on the O line, you might have another Kirk Cousins-esque player. Like he's a gunner, but you get him a little help and let him be chill in the pocket and like get his head on straight, you might have a good quarterback there.
Yeah,
But there's when you're getting sacked 65 times a year and you're constantly running for your life every time you snap the ball, there's there's no quarterback in the NFL that's going to be comfortable doing that. And that's going to have a really good season like that.
yeah.
So I don't know. But Bryce Young, Sam Howell, that explains like all of their troubles that they had last year.
None of them have a
It
chance.
explains a lot of them.
None of them have a chance where they're at until they get help.
Yes, especially Bryce Young. He is funny, young enough that, he can adapt. He can adapt. But he needs that help, and he needs everything on that offense. They don't have anything working on that offense
Yeah, they
at
suck.
all.
They suck. They blow chunks.
Like at no level is that offense working. So
I don't know what the point of them
have
to take a QB was when that team was not in order
yeah,
to have a QB come onto it. Does that
yeah,
make sense? Like,
yeah.
why do
So
franchises focus so much? Where's my guy? Where's my Patrick Mahomes? When the teams, because if you think about Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City was already built before he got there. You know what I'm saying?
it
Like
wasn't
line
it
was
wasn't fantastic,
no, but
but
it was
it
built.
was
It
built. It
it
was
wasn't
built.
QB getting massacred. You know, it
Yeah,
was a somewhat friendly offense, and they were just waiting for a spark, and
yeah.
then they got that in Mahomes. And you
They
you
were
could
waiting
do
for
the
a
same thing for
catalyst.
CJ. So CJ, the Texans have been building for the last what 5 to 8 years.
Yeah,
They've been getting offensive linemen. They've been getting defensive linemen. You know, building up that defense. That doesn't affect QB so much, but for sure, offensive line. And then Tank Dell, that was a friendly pick for CJ because he said, "I want this guy." They kept Nico around because they knew there was something there. They got the
yeah,
veteran Robert Woods. You know, they have been building that team for a long time. They got the head coach with the culture, and then now they're just waiting for a QB to go. All right, provide a spark, and that's what he
yeah,
did. But
yeah,
you have to build that team first. What have the Bears been doing for the last 20 years that's not working?
yeah,
Defense, 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 defense. All right, well, your quarterback has been sacked, what, 40 something times? So what do you want him to do?
yeah. So
Well, we're going to trade him. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that insight.
yeah,
Beautiful.
we're gonna trade him and draft somebody new. Yeah, let's draft somebody new. So
Well,
I get that. We
Williams.
need yeah, they need a lot of help on that Carolina offense. But Bryce Young throwing a rookie quarterback into the fire like that does not do well for their development.
Yeah.
It has been shown time and time again. And that is mismanagement by
And,
that front office.
and here's the other
So
thing. It's also about it's about the player that you're bringing in too. So Bryce Young, he's a pocket passer. That's what he is. He's an accurate QB that wants to stand there and make the right read. So when he has pressure left, right, up, down, and center, you're putting him in a position to be unsuccessful, right? So when they had Cam Newton, it's fine if pressure was coming because that man wanted to run the football anyways. And so he was going to break a tackle and get out of there. He was going to do
yeah,
something Cam Newton-ish and get out of there. He was going to fight 7 people at the same time and
yeah,
get out of there. Like the same thing he's doing at his QB camps now is what he was doing in the league. Like
yeah,
you didn't need to have an offensive line for Cam Newton. You didn't need to have good wide receivers because Cam Newton do everything. That's why he won MVP and nothing else.
yeah.
But the philosophy is just mind-boggling to me of we don't need to build this team. We just need the right guy. Why don't you build the team first and the right guy will come? Either you can sign him,
Exactly.
you can either sign him, you can trade for him, or you can take a shot on somebody with a lot of potential and develop them. But again, that goes into you got to build the team first. That includes the coaches.
Yeah, yeah. I completely agree.
You look at the Rams when they won the Super Bowl, they built that team and then said, all right, now we need our quarterback. Let's go grab Matthew Stafford. Boom, won a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I have another interesting fact that I want to look at. Um, in a matter of this is probably the worst. Worse than Sam Howell. I didn't notice this until literally right now as we're recording. The New York Giants offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Jones, who only played 6 games, he was sacked 30 times.
Oh my God.
And then Tommy DeVito came in and played another 10 games and was sacked 37 times. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, the New York
Like
Giants is worse than hell.
that, I mean, in
Why
just a
Saquon is
six a
leaving.
six game schedule,
That's why Saquon is.
30 times. That's ridiculous.
You couldn't
So
pay me all of the money in the West to go play for the Giants.
I fear for their next quarterback.
Yeah, that kid is
I
dead.
really do.
Dude, watch. It's gonna be JJ McCarthy, and that kid is gonna get smoked.
And you know what? You know what was surprising for me? Um, like Kirk Cousins. I know he only played 8 games, but it was 17 times in those eight games.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
and he had fumble
Okay.
issues. Yeah, moving
Yeah, and he
on.
had fumble issues. Okay.
Now that I'm done
So
ranting about why the Commanders
so not
suck,
okay, so that was the negative side of the sack counter. Um the I don't want to say positive side, but that sacks can also disrupt, but it's not a huge factor when it comes to an offense because of explosive plays and whatnot, depending on the quarterback that you have.
I mean, it gets into a lot of factors that
Because
are fantasy relevant and gets
yeah,
into
of
the
course,
theory that I
of
don't
course.
really know that we want to go into,
But
but
no. But Hurts, Dak, and Lamar also had respectively 36, 39, and 37 sacks on the year.
yeah,
And they all played like their full set of
which is,
games.
which is roughly
So
2 sacks a game,
yeah,
roughly
and that's not terrible for
2
those
to 2.5,
offensive lines.
somewhere in that
Now,
range.
when you're doing 65, that's really bad.
Yeah,
So, okay, moving on to big play rate. This is something that I wanted to bring up because you already brought that up
talk
about
about Mahomes.
Pat Mahomes. Um, so big play rate, Josh Allen, our QB1, big play rate was only 6%. That's it. 6%, which is crazy considering that Brock Purdy came in at 25.7%, almost 25.8.
His
Like,
run was kind of well. So it wasn't. Everyone thought it was Brock Purdy's catch and run. It was partly catch and run, but I mean,
yeah,
his average air yards was what, like 9.5, like yards in the air. Like he was slanging that thing downfield.
yeah. Well, and yeah, and that's what that was the next thing we were going to talk about was yards per attempt. Because yards per attempt, Brock Purdy blew everybody out of the water.
Yeah, it was like nine,
Everybody averaged 7.4, 8,
which is
7,
that's about what you.
6.4.
That is a
Like that's average. Brock Purdy was out here at 9.6 yards per attempt.
yeah. That man
So
is on.
like he was an outlier. And I don't know if that's just him. It's something that, you know, I'd love to figure out and dive a little deeper into, obviously not on this episode, but is that because of the system that he's in, Shanahan's system, or is
He,
that just Brock Purdy?
yeah.
Because, Shanahan gets really tricky and gets really sneaky with his plays, and he kind of pulls things out of his butt sometimes.
Well, I mean, I think
And
it's of him dealing it, but also like the big plays coming from his playmakers,
yeah,
like breaking tackles and
yeah.
Debo doing the same thing, Ayuk running insane routes, or Mike Tomlin with dreads running insane
Yeah,
routes. So
yeah.
I mean,
So it's just really it's really crazy like him having that stat line. It's a solid 2 points above everybody else on average. And and that to me was a little crazy, or like out of the box, I should say. And again, I don't know if that's the system that he's in or if that's just Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I
I'd
mean,
love to figure
in
that out.
in comparison, I had on my list C.J. Stroud, Trevor Lawrence, and Jordan Love. C.J. Stroud's big play rate was 16.8%. T. Law's was 12%, and then Jordan Love's was 15%.
Yeah, and I think a lot of everybody's big play rates were in the teens, like low teens. So just to see like stats like uh Pat Mahomes
Yeah,
and
Mahomes like
Brock Purdy.
Purdy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
Pat
insane.
Mahomes, Brock Purdy, like seeing such big play rates there. It's like
Well,
it's interesting to see,
not
and
not to
I'd like to see where that came from.
not to get into too much coaching theory, and I'm going to tie this back into fantasy. But as
Yeah,
a coach, that's what you want to see. I'd
yeah,
rather have big plays and go do something crazy and get the momentum on my side than, let's just try and cut them up, cut them up, cut them up, cut them up, cut them up. Let's see if we can win
yeah,
this. Because the only person who could do that consistently is Tom Brady. And there's never going
yeah,
to be another Tom Brady. So I want my guy to create big plays for me. And
yeah.
I'm sure people who have played football or been around football enough know like thing to talk about is big plays. So now looking into fantasy, who do I want on my team? Do I want someone who's going to be like consistent? Well, it depends on your team makeup. We've talked about it a lot. Are you building a consistent team and you're just trying to win your fantasy league on pace, which is a totally respectable thing to do?
Yeah.
Or are you looking at guys like Purdy and Mahomes of like, all right, when they go big, they're going to go big. And so, like, kind of how Ashley built her team and almost went to the championship of like,
Hmm.
yeah, I have Mike Evans and Tyreek Hill and essentially nothing else. But when Mike Evans and Tyreek Hill do what they're supposed to do and boom for me and create those big plays, that's all I need. I'll take these losses
Yeah.
when it matters and they boom, you're screwed,
Yeah.
which is another way of playing. But you have to have that concept in your head of, all right, I've got this guy and he's going to be everything or nothing, and let's see how the week shapes out. And you just have to
Yeah.
have that going into it and then do your best to look at these stats and say, what's my best chance? Who's the guy that's going to boom? Who do I think is going to keep doing it? And then build your team.
Yeah. I think that's a good. Yeah.
And to build on that just a little bit more, that's why I think
Okay.
Brock
Go
Purdy
ahead.
is a really good target to go for this offseason because I do think he has that not only consistent, but that big play factor.
Yeah. And see, that's what I regret. Well, I somewhat regret not going for Purdy when Josh offered him.
But he
Um,
asked for too much.
he asked for way too much. Love you,
He's
Josh,
he's
but you did. You
he's
asked for
a,
way too
he's a
much.
dirty man
He
outside.
practically asked for my first child,
Yeah.
like naming rights to my first child
But I
for
offered you
Brock
my
for
favorite
Brock
child for a
Purdy.
couple of trades in fantasy, and you didn't.
Yeah. So that's okay. That's all right. I am interested in making a trade with you at
I
some
know you
point this
do.
off
You
season.
should.
So
Everyone should be
yeah,
interested in my stable of running backs.
yeah, I am interested.
I have like
So
5 of them.
yeah, you do, and it pisses me off because I used to be that guy. I used to have all those running backs, and then they
You're just
crapped out
somebody
on me.
that I used to know.
Yeah, yeah. So this has been our 2020, well, was it 2023, I guess.
Yeah, reviewing 2023
Statathon,
into
reviewing
2023.
2023 and 2024 Statathon. So we're going to be going over running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends over the next couple of weeks. We're going to be getting together and doing this every week, just to give you guys a good picture of what last year was and what next year could be. So we're going to be going over pretty much the same stuff every week. So be sure to come back and check out our wide receivers, running backs, and our tight ends episodes over the over the next couple of weeks. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow us at Last Place FP on all of our social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, X. Um, and thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate everything that you guys do, all of our videos that you watch. So,
Never forget.
Ethan, go ahead.
Never forget. Sometimes you're right.
And sometimes you're the champion.
Sometimes you're right. We'll see you next week.